What's up, family? Today I want to share a powerful clip from a conversation that's already up on the channel. It's me and three other former ministers talking about mental health and ministry. This moment stood out because it captures that raw, honest space between faith, burnout, and awareness. The moment you realize that something isn't quite right, even when you're doing everything you were told was right. One of the voices you'll hear in this clip is Janine, a former minister who's now a licensed therapist. She'll be joining me this Friday, October 10th, for a special conversation we're calling Who Needs Therapy? So, as you watch this, think about the toll that ministry and religion in general can take on mental health and how learning to be aware might be the first step towards being well. After this clip, go back and check out the full conversation if you haven't already. It's one of the most honest ones we've ever had. And then make sure to join us back on Friday for a special conversation. I'll see you in a few.
Like that was
Wow,
like
that
mine's kind
clip
of like
still
opposite
haunts me
spectrum
every
abuse,
time.
right?
Yeah, I
So
feel like
I
that's going to do the wrong thing. That is not
feel
what I
that I
want.
was
No.
healthy, but I knew something was wrong. And that's why like I had such a strong reaction to your story. No, it was beautiful for me. Like I love that because I would not necessarily use the term healthy to describe myself. I would use the term I don't know what healthy looks like. I'm trying to figure it out. And so I'm aware when something is wrong. And I love because and that's why that was a strong reaction because I remembered times that after church I couldn't even get out of my car. And so like I'd have to be taken to the hospital and they would be doing brain scans and everything trying to figure out what was wrong. And I because in my mind I'm healthy at that time, you know? But in 2014 I became an atheist in a moment because I realized that nothing about my life was healthy. My finances weren't healthy. My family wasn't healthy. My faith wasn't helping. And so at that moment, my goal just became to be aware, to no longer pretend that you're okay when you're not, and to be comfortable with that. And gave me some trust issues because like I've spent my whole life like depending on my mentors to counsel me and advise and going to the people they suggested I go to. Yeah. And then I finally realized these motherfuckers are some dumbasses. Why would I go to them? So I'm just not. They don't even know how to ask the right fucking question. Like, I need to know who you advise. You just pick this shit out of a phone. Fuck. So like, but after I became very protective,
Yeah.
and I became very protective of my mental space,
Yeah.
my emotional space, and it wasn't the God thing was okay. It was like, oh yeah, yeah, because I knew the life I lived,
Yeah.
and I lived it faithfully.
Yeah.
And to be where I was for 2 decades, I was like, motherfucker, even if you is real, fuck you, absent ass. You know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
that ain't
No,
so.
right. Right.
Damn, that one, that's good. Damn
No,
it.
that's good. So, so I'm curious, and Joe, I know you've got something teed up. I think you want to say. I'm gonna throw it where I'd like to kind of see us journey down a little bit. And while we're thinking about that, I want to hear what you were planning to say just now. But as you're saying that, let's also kind of guide towards, yes, our own sense of mental health and human wholeness as ministers back then. But let's take a few minutes and talk about the impact our work had on the health and human wholeness of the people we ministered to and among. Yeah, so let's kind of meander that way. But yeah,
I'll try to make that transition. I'm not the best of a driver, so sorry in advance. Like I said, my mental health, I think, as far as I was aware, it seemed pretty good because, as I said, it's no sign of health, though, to be well adjusted to a sick culture. However, when I began to realize and have cognitive dissonance, so I'd shared I'd gotten to Denmark, I came back home from speaking at this conference, and then I said, I'll just watch a debate or two. I'll figure it out. I know all these things, I'll get my answers. And, well, that debate or two. Here I am. Um, listened to a lot of debates, and I struggled and I wrestled. And it took me about 2 years to really come to realization, or maybe I should even say to an accept the realization. And so over those 2 years, as we're talking about mental health and then the transitioning into the impact that it's had on others, I lived the human experience. I felt pain, I felt struggle, and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. And this is why things like this are so valuable. This is why I love, leading a community that's built on values. And when people can come in and they, what? So you believe something different. Who gives a flying fuck, excuse my French? Are you a kind and loving, compassionate person? And so for me at my congregation, even though I hadn't, I was still trying to be the best Christian I could, the fact that I questioned things and I couldn't speak to a single person, the loneliness that I felt, and as humans, one of the greatest needs that we have is to connect. And that was terrible in my mental health. The first person that I ever spoke to, that I said, I don't think I believe it anymore, was a friend of mine sitting in my car in my driveway, and he had come out to me about 10 years previously as gay. And I think that there's some similarity in that. And he had that struggle for years where he knew he was gay his whole life. And yet he went to a Christian college with me, and he couldn't share who he was. And so as we talk about the mental health of others, I have to take responsibility. On one hand, I can be honest. I can say, because my grandfather was a minister, that, okay, I did that. So I'm going to be as honest as I can. But also, at a certain point, I taught that if you're gay, it's wrong. And I'm sorry. I voted a way that I'm discouraged by myself in 2016, if you know what I mean. And I think about the people who were a part of my community. There's a lot of good that was done. I worked for the Salvation Army for nearly a decade. We did a lot of great things. But we also said, if you're of a certain lifestyle, we'll help you, but you don't belong. And where that has, I think, brought me to now is I realized just the ugly side of it. There, to be honest, I think there's a lot of good in religion sometimes, but there's an ugly side. And so the mental health of others, in a way, and I'll close, I'm going on preacher mode.
No,
here.
you're good.
I'll close with this. Emotions are not good or bad, and correct me if I'm wrong here, therapist. They are pleasant and unpleasant is the way I like to frame it. And in a way, I'm glad that I went through 2 years of unpleasant emotions, because it taught me that I can share in the journey with people. Is this being recorded and put on anything?
I don't know. Is it?
I'll just say this. I won't give specifics. I've had people who've come to me now and who have said, I'm exploring my gender. And because of things like that they know you're a safe space. And I'm glad that I've held that emotion, that I know what it's like to feel like you can't be seen. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually want to use one of my more progressive for this.
Yeah.
My church was looking for a new praise and worship leader. Number one, because I was tired of damn music, right? So I was like, all right, we just pay somebody, and we hired a guy. He was what I call apparently gay. It means he wasn't cult.
Okay.
Was apparent, So we and I talked with my staff before we seen. They would describe him as animated, and I'm like, you're past this, so let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And my church, we were the hood church, so they were like, all right, they didn't really know the Bible anyway, so they, like if pastor cool with it, we cool. So we hired him and lost 40% of our congregation over the next.
Oh shit!
Like it was drastic. My church was usual because we had a high population of men in our congregation. That was the 40% that left. They were like men in the South, specifically Black men, incredibly homophobic. And that was an assault on their man. Now we did end up releasing it, not because of the apparently gay or the 40% decrease in revenue,
Sure.
Y'all thought about people leaving. I'm talking about like numbers drop. That means there's less money in the bucket, which means your boy is having to take out loans to pay for the damn church. And that's not fun. But his schedule was big because apparently the more gayer you are, the more popular you are at praise worship. And so, he was blowing up. And we weren't mad because it was like, unleashed. We could probably get back to normalcy. And so I got back to doing praise and worship. And then I got tired again. So it's somebody else.
How so 40% or so left. The other 60 that remained, how did that affect them? And that rupture, how did that affect the rest of the 60% that stayed?
The weird thing about it is they were completely like unaware. It's just not in their mind. And this could have been because we were a two service church at the time, so they're not really seeing this in the numbers. But for the 60 that remained, I think they remained because they didn't care. They didn't care who that person was. They just enjoyed that experience, which was demonstrated because the next person I hired was also apparently gay, and was more apparent, if you ask me. But my church loved him. And he ended up becoming one of like my best friends. Yeah. And like men in my church embraced him. Our church started growing back. And again, he wasn't less apparently gay. He was more flamboyant, as my staff, more animated than the other guy. But, and this brings back to the question, and I shared this in my book, Black Unbeliever Next Door. It started to bother me because I realized I humanized everybody in my congregation, regardless of their sins, except him. I allow everybody else to be whoever you are. You could smoke your cigarettes on my property. I don't care. You say, "Pastor, ain't this God's property? The whole earth is God's property." It's hypocritical to say they can't smoke it, but they can smoke. That's Pastor. Never for his life. Even though I had done it. He had got drunk one time, texted my drummer some really gay shit. And he called me. I panicked. And I covered for him. Yeah. Became Olivia Pope, said his handle. Fixed it, Yeah. And I did. But I've never done that for my book. And to this day, I wrestle with this sense.
Yeah. We could go a few different directions from here. Let's do this. Okay. Well, Janine, did you have any more you wanted to say about just impacts of your work?
I think the biggest impact for me was I worked with a lot of parents because I was in early childhood education, and I also wrote the curriculum. And looking back at I was really well done curriculum based on John Piper makes me cringe. But that was the direction I was given by the church. And so I created this full year curriculum for 4 different age levels, age appropriate, etc. But it had that content. And I'm thinking of those children now who are going 18, 20 years old at this point. And I'm hoping it wasn't as negative as I know it probably was. But then the lack of ability to be able to say to parents who are asking me for help what I really wanted to say because I was constrained by my role. And so sometimes the advice I really wanted to give them was outside what the church would allow me to say. And not doing it bothers me to this day.
I just want to piggyback on that last thing you said, because you were like, damn it. Can't do it because it's not what the church would want me to say. And I remember being in so many counseling sessions with my members, and there were things that I want to say to them. There are things that I want to tell, but I know like that's not the biblical response. That's not the pastoral response. That's not the Christian response. And just rethinking that, like, oh my goodness, that's like, that is real damage. Because there's some counseling sessions I was in where I was like, hey, y'all just need a divorce. That's what I wanted to say. Like, for real. Y'all just picked each other because y'all wanted to have sex. Let's stop playing these games. Y'all don't like each other. Divorce. Just go ahead. Y'all ain't got no kids. Call it even right now. Split it down the middle. But of course, I couldn't say that. No, what God has joined together, let know, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh my, and it ain't make no damn.
Wow, that clip still hits me every time. It's raw, it's real, and it reminds me how much unspoken pain so many of us carried in the name of faith, trying to hold it all together while falling apart on the inside. That's why this Friday, October 10th, I'm sitting down with former minister and licensed therapist Janine for a conversation we're calling Who Needs Therapy? We're not coming with diagnosis, we're coming with dialogue, a little conversational therapy to help all of us unpack what we've been carrying and figure out how to move forward with real healing. And if you're looking forward to a community that makes space for that kind of growth, join me every Sunday for our Bridge City Sunday sessions. It's a space for progressive, people-centric conversations about life beyond belief, because healing isn't just personal. It's communal. I'll see you this Friday and every Sunday after that. By the way, before we go, check out this promo and hopefully I'll see you in California. Until next time, keep rising.
When I think about what community is, when I think about what the church was for many people, I think about community as a service. I know so many people right now whose passion was media, and if it weren't for their church, they wouldn't be able to pursue that passion. I know so many people whose passion is music, and if it weren't for their church, they wouldn't have a place to practice that passion. I know people whose passion is communication and finding ways to inspire and motivate other people. And if it weren't for their churches, church shouldn't be the only place that meets those needs. It shouldn't be the only place that nurtures our gifts, platforms our voices, and empowers our living. That's why Bridge City Global is building community and creating the space to help you keep rising. Join us October 25th or the 26th in Venice or San Diego, your choice. Our local Bridge City community is having their initial liftoff weekend. And as a way of celebrating, we're hosting our very first Rise event. This is for you. We're about to shed the weight of limiting beliefs and open ourselves to clarity, purpose, and possibility. Through powerful voices and intentional community, you'll not only rediscover your own strength, but also the belonging that comes when we choose to rise side by side. And for those interested in being a part of this global community, go ahead and tap in now, and you may get an invite to our Friday evening and Sunday morning activities while you're in Cali. Don't miss this moment. Add Liftoff Weekend to your calendar and be ready to rise. Register now.
Take another shot at me.